All right, we'll go ahead and get started tonight. Thank you all for coming to the first ELPCO meeting of 2019. We've been off for a couple months, so it's great to see a big crowd back here. We've got a very nice packed agenda, a lot of it focused on 9th and 9th and 900 South. Some great presenters taking some time to come here and tell us about the projects that they want to do in our neighborhood and get our feedback and our input. I want to introduce my co-chair, Darrell High, who normally is on 2 legs. He's like that riddle of the Sphinx, right? He's on 3 right now, or 4 or 5 right now. And then let me just introduce some of the ELPCO members the board members we have in the audience. Ellen Parrish, raise your hand back there. Great, thanks. Tom Luoma.
West Emerson.
West Emerson. Tom Luoma, raise your hand. Gilmer Park area. See Judy Short, our land use advisor, and Jeremy Higginson is manning the live stream from East Emerson. East Liberty Park, sorry, East Liberty Park. And am I missing any board members as I'm looking around? We do have a nominee of Melanie Williamson to become our new East Emerson representative. We'll take care of that a little bit later in the business. So thank you for coming, Melanie. We've had a vacancy there and appreciate the work you've done in the neighborhood so far. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We always start with the fire department. And because there's not a whole bunch of, big folks standing at the back of the room, I guess they're not here. So
Probably had a fire.
Probably had a fire, yeah.
Or picking somebody up off the street.
Did you have a fire department truck come?
I did.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, they didn't have to come far, that's good.
No.
Well, let's turn it over to Detective King, who's going to speak to us about the Salt Lake City Police Department, some of the things going on there.
And Detective King is brand new to our council. Please come. So we're lucky to have a community officer assigned to our councils. So he's brand new. We're thrilled to have you.
Appreciate it. So if you haven't met me, I'm Dave King with the Salt Lake Police Department. I've been here for 12 years, and the last 3 years I've been over District 4. So just had a little bit of a vacancy. We kind of moved around a little bit. So I'll be helping and assisting with you guys with what I can. Looking over some of the crime reports and stuff that's going on in this area. The crime is actually showing it's down. The car thefts and burglaries are down. This is covering like all of District 5, so all the councils. It looks like everything's down, but I still want to remind people we still have issues with warming cars in the morning. Please don't do that. I understand it's cold and it sucks getting into it, but we actually have a lot of cars stolen that way. There's actually quite a few mornings that what's that?
I said it serves people right. They're going to leave it running. They're asking for somebody to come.
And unfortunately, there are people that do walk around looking for that. And sometimes the cars, it's actually pretty to find them. There's sometimes that my squad has come in early in the morning. We got these little cards saying your car could have been stolen, and we just look for the exhaust. And I'm sure I scared some people because I'll drive out next to the driver's window to see if anybody's in there, and they look at us like, "What are you guys doing?" Scare them that way. But sometimes we do put them in a lot of cars, and I think it does catch a lot of people off guard because I've had one where I had an apartment complex where I guess because they had the door open, they thought that they could watch their car, and I was able to park in front, walk up, stick the card, and drive away, and they had no idea I was even there. So we do get out and try to educate, and I understand that there are cars that have a little remote that you can remote start it, so somebody can't steal the car, but there is a city ordinance that says you can't idle.
They're also illegal according to the EPA. There's a $30,000 fine for the implementation of a remote start.
Really?
What? Yes. It is considered a modification of the emission system.
Really?
Yeah.
That is if it's
aftermarket maybe, but no.
Yes.
Mercedes
we'll talk about that.
That's it.
After the
I've never heard of that, so that's good to know. One of the things, a lot of times, like you hear all the time, like, oh, I got my purse stolen, I got my cell phone stolen, I got change. There's a lot of stuff that does get stolen, but some of the things probably a lot of people don't ever hear about is weird stuff like batteries. I don't know why. A lot of times it's more with like semis and stuff, but it's not that hard to. They just go up, hurry, and clip the wires, and they take batteries, and I guess there's a huge resale value for them. So watch batteries, watch plates, especially your front plate. Know what your plates are supposed to be. There's times where I've driven around and I see a car thinking I got a stolen vehicle, and walk up, and the poor person inside the car has no idea what's going on. They didn't know their plate had been taken off, and sometimes it had been like that for a couple weeks that somebody else is driving around on their plate. One of the other things I do too is like your registration decal. Like what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll wipe it and clean it off, and then I'll stick the decal on. Then I actually take like a razor blade and I'll just cut lines through it. So if somebody tries peeling it, they'll get pieces, but they don't get the whole sticker. We do have stuff like that where people have stolen stickers off of registration. So just keep being aware, keep seeing what's going on. Don't hesitate to give us a call if you guys have any questions. My number, if you guys need to reach me, feel free to reach out. It's 801-799-3624, and you can email me at ciudistrict5@slcgov.com. If you can't remember it, if you lose it, if you get onto Salt Lake City's webpage, there's a spot that says Find My CIU Officer, and it has all of us on there.
It's on the back of this too.
Sweet. So with that CIU District 5, if you email me, it also does go to my sergeant, so if it happens that I'm out of the office and it needs to be covered right then and there, he can get someone else on there, but it does let him know that what's going on too. Does anybody have any questions for me?
No, but a comment.
Yeah.
Since my street became a thoroughfare for about a week plus,
What street?
Kensington Avenue,
Yeah.
because they diverted everybody on 13th.
Uh-huh.
Until I called to say, hey, what's going on? People were zooming down those streets at 40 miles an hour. It's only a 25 anyway. But they were going down, and the buses were going down, so it's a parade. Is there anything that can be done? I know, they've been warned, but is there anything that the police can do? I mean, even if a car's there that says, oh, I gotta slow down because there's a cop car there.
Yeah. What I would do is if you get onto Salt Lake City's webpage,
1300/Salt Lake City, yes.
you get on and if you get in the search engine, you can type in like speed watch, and it pulls up where you can actually submit a request for patrol, or not patrol, but an officer to look over the area. That speed watch goes to the motor sergeant. The motor officers are the ones that are tasked with traffic enforcement and that kind of stuff.
Well, it's just the fact that we know it's being closed. It's obvious it's being closed. It just seems like it just doesn't get handed off to anybody to do anything.
I would contact that speed watch, because you contact patrol, and patrol has a gazillion things that they're working on, and so for them to dedicate a car, it's kind of hard for them. But that's what the motors do. They do traffic enforcement all the time, and maybe if they could go out there and they can sit and watch it, and just having them out on the bike or a car could be a huge help to you. But I would reach out to them.
There's one other thing you could do as well. There is an ombuds person for that 13th South or 13th
yes.
East sewer project. So let me get you her contact info.
Oh, I put it, once I sent an email,
Yeah.
I got so tired of it, I sent an email, and I noticed the next day there was a sign up there.
Yeah.
And within the next day, 2 days later, they took it away.
Yeah. The same thing
But
happened
it
on
starts
Laird
coming
Avenue
along again,
with
and,
people
and,
dropping
and it's
down,
being
so-
diverted different times and
Yeah.
stuff, and
Let me reach out to her and tell her that next time they close the street, they've got to do a better job at, alerting the residents, putting in those solar-powered speed signs and things
well,
like
you've got McClellan that
Yeah.
goes across there, 1200 East, I'll call it like it was.
the McClellan Trail. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's 1200 East, I mean, it's not a thoroughfare, it's a walking spot.
Sure.
But you're seeing those cars just go zooming
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Let's get in touch with those folks and make sure they do a
Anyway.
better job next time.
It was just-
Because that's going
that
straight
was
to
my
the source,
comment.
because then they can reach
Yeah.
out to the department and get the transportation.
That works
So-
too.
Oh,
Anybody else? All right. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. I'll be here for a little bit, and then we'll have to take off a little bit early. Thanks.
I have a question about the murder.
I have no more information than what you know that was broadcast on TV. They actually, a lot of times what they'll do with that, like if I was to run an address, like where it occurred, or if I ran your name, it might show that there was an incident, but it says it's locked, that our homicide detective sergeant locks it. And I'm not privy to that. They like to keep that stuff top secret squirrel. So I pretty much know what you know from the media.
Just wondering if there's anything anybody could have done.
Any what?
Anybody could have done.
Just what it seems like to me. I mean, it seems like he was going out to a property. If there's any time, like if you guys are dealing with something that's confrontational or whatever, we can always come do a standby assist. We don't need to necessarily get involved, but just being there. If you guys are selling stuff online and you feel something's going on, you're more than welcome to go to like the police station to meet in the lobby as you guys are exchanging stuff. But anytime you have issues like that, I mean, we do quite a bit of standby assist just on domestic stuff where people are splitting and they're retrieving property just to try to keep the peace. I don't know all the situations or all the details, but there's some things that can be done, but a lot of it just depends on you and how you feel at the time. Right?
Dave, that's really interesting. I'd never thought of that before. So with all the KSL sales and so on, do you ever have people come into the lobby of the downtown building there on
We have.
the south? And
I don't know. I couldn't tell you how many. I think that people have come in to meet up with other people.
Oh.
But I mean, yeah, you guys. I mean, it's an area if you want to meet. It's open to the public there in the front lobby. So.
Great suggestion. Thank you. And again, his contact information is on the back of your agenda, so they do respond. Amy, if you'd like to come down, and Dan Schmeling and Hannah Vaughn from Vaugh, sorry if I mispronounced that, from Sheridan's Hip and Humble architecture firm. So this is Sheridan Mordew, and she owns Hip and Humble on 9th South, and it's not 1037 East.
The project is 1037.
1037 is a
And then Hip and
project.
Humble is 1043. We're right on the corner of McClellan and 900 South.
So this is Amy Thompson from Salt Lake City Planning Department, and she will introduce our topic for this evening and talk about all of their efforts to get this through.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm Amy. I'm from the planning division. I'm the one processing this application. So it's a conditional use application and a conditional building and site design application. And I understand those things probably mean nothing to you, but the reason why they're going through this process is basically because they are, there's an existing building where this one is proposed. And that's considered a residential structure, not because of its use. It's been used as a commercial building for over a decade, but because of its exterior. And so because they are removing that to construct an addition that's non-residential, that's why they're going through this process. And so there's some specific standards we look at for conditional use. And then in addition to that, the conditional building and site design standard requires them to build an addition that's exactly the same as the building that they're adding it to. Same color, design, material, and they are proposing the opposite of that in order to try to maintain the small scale of the neighborhood and make them appear as two separate buildings even though they're attached. So that is basically the purpose of this proposal, and I'll let them talk about the more pretty things and the actual details of their project. So.
Thanks, Amy. Again, I'm Sheridan Mordew. I own Hip and Humble at the corner of McClellan and 900 South. My sister and I bought the Hip and Humble property and the 1037 property 16 years ago, and we have been a part of your neighborhood for that long, and we have enjoyed every single second of it. We love 9th and 9th. And most of you know that I have been really involved with businesses there, as well as the community council. Daryl and I have worked together. We worked together a lot when the Nexus, which is on the corner of 9th South and Lincoln, came up, and we had it just felt like it didn't fit into the neighborhood. And Daryl and I worked really closely on that together, trying to find some solutions. And so anyway, I have just a great appreciation for this council and how organized and well you run your neighborhoods and are involved in the community. So anyway, as Amy said, we have to go through the conditional use, and it's really because we want to tear down that cute little house of Kudikar. And it is a darling house, but it actually has no foundation. It is sitting on sand. And we have, for 16 years, been able to lease that out and kind of hobble it along, and make a great space for the neighborhood with Kudikar. but it is now time that we really upgrade that property. And if you go into the building, I mean, it's like a spook alley. You're walking on this angle, and it's really bad, and so it needs to come down. We don't really have a choice unless we leave it vacant, I guess. But as Amy said, it has been a retail place for as long as we've been there, and now we are proposing this new building, which I am really, really excited about. It's very different from the Hip and Humble, but it has some aspects that go back to a kind of more of a historical feel that fits into the neighborhood, which is really important to us. No doubt, Suzette and I have very strong feelings about what we want to go into this building, who we want to lease it to, and obviously that is small businesses, local businesses that also fit into our neighborhood and what our needs are in our community. And most likely, you know, there's 3 spaces in the bottom. We would love to have a cafe in there of sorts. And then up top, we have 3 spaces, and those will be office spaces. The one thing that I love about our design is we have on the side here some great community space. I know that you're really familiar with Pizza No-No, and they have that great little patio out front. It's kind of, I guess, to the side. But we will also have a side patio there. You know, great community space, families. Anyway, so I'm excited about that part, probably most of all. I definitely feel as my business will stay in the Hip and Humble building on the corner. I am really excited to have this other building there. I think it will bring the neighborhood, keep it moving up the street, and keep that walkability happening, which we all really want. And so anyways, I guess that's mostly what I wanted to say about our building. Did you guys have anything else that I missed on that? No? Okay. I'd love to open it to any questions that you guys might have specifically about our design or the project in and of itself. Yes?
So it is not going to be part of it. It is a separate entity, and it's just a commercial piece of property.
It is.
I'm hearing you say, well, it's part of, but it's not part of, and then we're doing this.
It is not part
It's
of
just a
Hip and Humble.
commercial piece of property
It is.
that was residential, and now it is fully commercial, and you wanna expand on it. Is that correct?
It has been a commercial business for, I honestly, it was commercial before we even bought it.
Conditional use.
But we have to go through the conditional use because it was originally built years and years ago
Sure.
as a home. So yes, but it will be a retail establishment.
I just kept hearing that it's part of Hip and Humble. It's part
It
of,
is not
so
part of
it-
Hip and
it is-
Humble.
it's
I
just-
own both
it's just
properties, but it
a
is
commercial
not.
piece of property.
Yes.
Sheridan, are you, just to be clear, are you looking to take down the Hip and Humble building? and
No.
then- okay.
No. That will stay the same.
Why
Yes.
don't you want this building to look like the Hip and Humble building?
Our biggest reason for that, I think that it fits better in with the neighborhood, having it look differently. If you go down to the corner, particularly on the south side where like Mazda is, there's all those buildings, they're built very close together, but they all have a slightly different facade, and that is kind of what we're trying to imitate there, so.
Sharon,
Those are all
you
good.
might also mention what's driving the shape of the building. I don't think anyone here knows
Okay.
what's there.
Sure. One other thing, and that's important to me, as far as not letting it be or look like Hip and Humble, is that I don't want another huge building that feels out of context. I think having two smaller looking buildings, I think fits better. Daryl wanted me to talk a little bit about the shape of the building. As you notice, we have a street front, and the street front is actually smaller or less, it's not as wide as Hip and Humble. So Hip and Humble is a little bit wider than the street front on this part right here. Oh, great. So what Daryl's talking about is kind of how we designed this kind of step feature. And the driving reason for that is we have that cute little thing that we all know about in the neighborhood, the canal, that is running through the property. So we have a 30-foot easement on the property that we cannot build on. Hence, why we have this great opportunity for community space and patio. But that is what is driving that step back design. My sister and I also really liked the step back design because we thought it would be great to have 3 different looking, retail spaces. Yeah.
Do you have off-street parking planned for this?
Yeah, so the parking here you can see, so right now Hip and Humble has 3 parking spaces in the back. And then we have 2 out front and then 2 on the sides. So we have doubled the parking in the back to 6. Unfortunately, with the redesign of 900 South, we are losing 1 parking space on the side here because they're building out the curbage. These 2 will maintain the same. So we have doubled our parking, which is fantastic. I'd love to see more parking. We are kind of in the middle of investigating doing a cutout. If you think about in front of Western Flag Fishers, they have a cutout here. If we do that, we can probably get 5 to 6 spaces, but we're kind of a long way from getting that completely dialed in, but our fingers are crossed that that does happen. It's absolutely a big deal to us, the parking issue,
So are you asking for a variance on the parking, or does
No.
that meet
No,
the
no.
spaces that you guys require?
No, they'll have to meet the parking requirement, and we don't have a variance that would allow them to.
So where are your people gonna park that are supposed to be using this new building? If you're gonna, if you're hoping for 3
So
different
there's
businesses?
parking down here. Yeah, there's parking down here as well. There's also parking all the way up the street here on McClellan. There's the electrical thing. I mean, we can park all the way up and down that street. So honestly, for me, and I would, as a landlord for people that are working here, I would be requesting them parking in front of that, I don't even know what it is, electrical plant.
Substation.
It's the substation, and then those 6 spaces as well as the street parking can all be used for people visiting.
So how many people do you plan on using that
I don't know,
space?
it really depends on what goes in there. Don't really know that answer yet.
I mean, a restaurant makes a big difference.
Yeah, it might not be.
And they won't let you do that cutout. We tried to do that up above where the insurance company is. And I don't know, for some reason they don't.
Yeah.
Because you can't pull out anymore unless it was already grandfathered in. Just so you know.
Yeah.
This is a little off the subject, but it pertains to this. The parking won't necessarily be your issue, but it's an issue of the community. And
Absolutely.
I assume that eventually ELPCO or the 9th and 9th group will start talking about a parking authority to maybe change some of the parking requirements, or I know they've been talking about maybe meters or something and using the money to help the community. No, they've been talking about it.
Yeah,
But the
doesn't make it
trail is not being used, or that is the canal still. It's not the trail.
Right.
But the trail stops at 9.
It does.
But is there
It goes
talk
across
about-
across McClellan, yeah.
Yeah, but is there talk about converting the north end to a trail?
I have no idea.
Because that'd go through your property.
Yeah, I have no idea. I would assume that there is not a plan.
But can you handle that plan, if there is one?
Well, obviously, we would have a patio there already,
Right.
so there would be, it wouldn't hurt the building.
I could be wrong here, but per our preliminary conversations with transportation, I believe they're diverting the trail up to McClelland at that location because it can't go through the substation. So the substation is actually the larger barrier. This building isn't
Okay.
really the issue. But I would
Yeah, that
defer
makes
to
sense.
them ultimately, but I think they're still working.
That would make sense.
So the substation is directly behind you guys?
It is
Okay.
right behind us.
One property.
Yeah,
one property back.
there's a building here, and then it's right there.
And that building behind you is a residence?
No, that is,
No.
there's, yeah, it's an office building, there's a masseuse and
There's an architect.
there's architect, and I think there's a police, sort of group that lives there.
Judy, you might refresh my memory, but with the 9-line, going in and the roundabout that's gonna go in on 9th South and 11th East, I remember somewhere in one of the meetings with the city that they talked about the trail being routed up, as you said, either McClelland or 11th South, where it ties into 8th South. Does that bring any memories with you, Judy?
It doesn't, but
I can speak to that next.
Tom will do the presentation on that line next, so, yeah, that's where we started this.
I'm just concerned about, and he brought that on up, is the parking. Because 9th and 9th is already
It's,
it is a walking
Yeah.
zone, but it isn't. Because everybody is trying to crowd in. I mean, Great Harvest, what is it? It's becoming a parking lot.
it is.
And
absolutely.
everybody's trying to squeeze in there, and that's, I'm concerned that you're building something and you're gonna have ideally multiple use, multiple businesses in there. The number is a good question, and how much it's gonna be used, but where are the people gonna be able to park? Because people aren't gonna wanna park and then walk a half a block to find it.
And that may be true, absolutely. I think parking has always been, and it will continue to be, a big issue at 9th and 9th. There's just no.
Well,
there is
we're
no
not
way
talking
around
about
it.
9th and 9th as much as we are your property.
Well,
With the parking there.
I am referring to 9th and 9th and 1043 and 1037 as all one, like just that shopping district. It is, parking is a problem and it'll continue to be a problem, unfortunately.
So you're not considering cutting back the size and adding more parking spaces in your back?
Well, we really can't,
Okay.
unfortunately.
I mean, I think George coming up with the idea of, you
didn't
can't
come
solve
up
the
with that
parking
idea.
problem one development at a time, it's a macro issue. And I wanna give a later plug for the 9th and 9th survey that maybe some of you have done. We have a whole section on parking, including some ideas of metered parking, diagonal parking and so forth. But we'll get to that. But I don't think we can solve the parking issue with one development. We've gotta come back to it and look at it in a holistic way.
Yeah. On the parking, as Amy said, we have that requirement. We're not asking for anything special. We actually have more parking than the city required on this development. Yeah.
I'm a homeowner here, been a homeowner since 2017 summer. Altogether. And I've never had trouble with any in regards to parking. Not that it pertains to you, as you said, but I think we have ample parking here, and I think our neighborhood's really lovely how it is. And one thing I don't want to see in my neighborhood is a parking lot. So that's just how I feel.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I
Laura.
love you, but.
Laura, is this gonna break up our friendship?
No, we will still love each other. But, I have lived, I own 1111 Pines South since 1985, next to the lovely, insurance company that became what it is, which we are glad that it didn't become what it was going to be. I don't understand what all happened. But, I mean,
things to remember, because I do hear what you're saying, and I think there's a couple things that you need to remember. Is that our height here is shorter than my next door neighbor, North Star, to the east of me, okay? So we are
It was
lower.
also a hill.
Yeah, but no, even if we put them
You're
side by side.
absolutely-
Yes, if you looked at us side by side, we are still lower in our height. The other thing is, I agree, this picture looks, I think, more contemporary, and that is not exactly our representation. We are doing a brick facade. So where this doesn't, I think, look like that, this looks a little bit more modern, we're doing brick. And then these windows, we are copying windows like you see down on 9th and 9th that have the big heavy iron over the top. So I think you're going to see a lot more reminiscent of like historical 9th and 9th
Okay, just
than
when you
this,
say historical, like,
than this picture represents. Because I absolutely agree with you, and that was something that was really important to me. And we have gone over this a million times with our architects, that we have to have some, like a huge throwback or like a great, it has to have this 9th and 9th feel for me to be happy with it. And so we are trying really hard to do that.
Well, I so
Absolutely.
appreciate the cutback because it gives depth.
And
It's
just-
a big
just-
giant thing.
Just to jump in a little bit, I think the facade, we were obligated because of this canal setback to squeeze the facade into it's pretty narrow, and so the proportion of the facade makes it look taller. 30 feet is actually not super tall. It's below the 30 feet height limit, by the way. It's many.
Compared to a Kudikar that was there.
Compared to Kudikar, it's tall, but
And
compared to
compared
number,
Hip and Humble also.
yeah, it's a little bit taller than Hip and Humble. You're right. It's a two-story building. It's a two-story building, which I think matches the rhythm of that street. But the proportion of the facade, because it's so narrow, makes this image look a little bit taller. But if you look at it in context, I mean, and it's a little bit fuzzy, but that facade is kind of narrow. It's in scale with the neighborhood. The proportion is a little bit taller, but the actual building isn't very tall.
Well, and just a comment, you say it's in proportion to the neighborhood, but all those buildings have come and nobody, like, I mean, sorry, no, not nobody, but those buildings that they can, a lot of people didn't like them then.
Right.
So to say this is in, I'm just,
I absolutely hear what you're
all
saying,
around
Laura.
here, and the thing is, it's all coming, and I have another house on 9th and, 7th South and 10th East, and they're wanting to put in monster things there, and I just think it's really beautiful place they have on that.
Yeah, I am with you for sure. And like Hip and Humble, that building is so cute and it's staying forever. It, like honestly, I appreciate where you're coming from because I feel the same way. Thank you. Yes.
Do you have any variances that you need the community support on to get this approved?
No, there's one variance, and that variance is, so Hip and Humble is stucco, and we want this building to be brick. So, unless you want me to build a stucco building, that's the variance I need, right, Amy? Is just that it's a variance on that one, right?
Just to be clear, it's not called a variance, that's just like a really specific word if they were going through a process with like an appeals hearing officer. It's conditional building and site design, so we have some specific design standards for the residential business district, and that is what they're requesting, is to not have the building exactly the same as Hip and Humble in terms of material design, in an effort to try to make it look like a separate building.
So we don't have to go through the process, it sounds, but that's why we're here, is getting community feedback. But that is the big one, is the brick on the exterior, which I'm hoping we're all on board that we'd rather have a brick building than a stucco building.
So the idea is it would become one building, right?
It's an addition.
But
to
It will be an addition. They
But you
will
wanna
not-
paint them two different colors.
How can it be an
right?
addition when you just said it's separate and it's whole different?
Basically, it's taking the two properties and combining them, but I think
It's
about
like a
it as your
condo,
house.
side by side
Your house
apartment.
has to be painted in kind of one color, right? That's what works. And here, what I think Sheridan's trying to do is differentiate the buildings so that they look a little different and keep that kind of 9th and 9th, oh, this is this and this is that kind of approach, even though they're going to be combined as one property under sort of the zoning and planning process.
So you are gonna combine it as a property as one piece of
They
property.
are,
Right.
yes.
So there's
no space between the two
No.
properties? Can you walk between the new property and the?
No.
No.
Unless you're really, really.
No, they are touching.
Yeah, they will be
It's a common wall, but they are not.
There will be two separate walls, because they will be two separate buildings, but they will be built right next to each other, yes.
If they're two different lots, how does that happen?
We are combining the
combine the
lots.
But that, don't you have to go through something to be able to do that?
That's just an administrative
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
that doesn't require coming through a public process if you wanna combine your lot.
So someone can get thing and put some big gigantic thing in there to buy.
Well, it depends on what they wanna put.
Yeah, you can't build as big as you want.
They're not coming through this process because they're combining their lot, they're coming through this process because they're tearing down a structure that maintains its residential exterior and replacing it with one that doesn't have a
Right, just
residential
for my own
exterior.
education, though, don't you have to do something to combine two different?
You have to go through a process, but it's not a public process. You would file an application with the city for a lot consolidation, and we would look at that. Whether or not your giant building that you're putting on that 3 combined lot, whether or not that would have to come to a public process, it depends on what you're building.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy.
If they didn't combine the lots, the lot wouldn't be buildable. You wouldn't be able to fit, you wouldn't have any street frontage at all.
Cause you have to have 7.5 feet.
I know.
A tiny, you could put a tiny house through it.
And one other thing to keep in mind is if they wanted to tear down Kudikar and replace it with a structure exactly like the one they're building, but just put a residential use in it, this wouldn't come before you at all. So that's just something to keep in mind. The reason why is because it's a residential exterior currently, and they are replacing it with a non-residential use. It's not because of the actual use, it's because of how the exterior of the building was.
So does it have dual, does it have residential and business on it?
No, that's why it's coming to a conditional use process. I'm just trying to explain to you that they're not requesting any additional height, they're not, it's nothing to do with
It's
that.
business right now, but because it looks like a house, we have to do this. It's a really strange, it didn't make any sense to me, and I fought it, because I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, because it's already business, but it's
This
just.
is the only zone that this requirement, I believe, is
So
in.
it's only zone residential right now.
It's zone residential business. So these uses that they're proposing are allowed uses, which is another odd thing about the conditional use process, is normally it's just these
Because
conditional
we're tearing down a residential structure and not replacing it with another
And just having
residential
the business
use.
in it.
Yeah, it really, there's many different ways we can read
Yeah.
it. It's not like super
Yeah.
logical.
I think this proves that 9th and 9th has some pretty funky zoning,
It has a lot of funky zoning.
because it's a funky place, so, yeah.
We want to keep it like we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions for Sheridan and her team? Right here?
Well, this is sort of a simple observation. Just so glad that someone like you is building here, you've been investing in the community for so long, and it's not some out-of-state corporate.
I feel the same way.
So, I think that's just
Yeah. Thank you so much. I have deep and sincere love for 9th and 9th, and I live at 15th and 15th, so I'm like you guys. I walk to Mazda for dinner. I walk with my kids to Sweetly. I go get homework at the King's English. I love where I live, and it's because it's this walkable community and what we have available. So thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight, and yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for coming. I did get it, I should get it.
Call me tomorrow or whatever.
Jason is going to introduce Tom, but if you want to know how interesting the zoning is at 9th and 9th, that's what the zoning looks like at 9th East and 9th South in that neighborhood. Your next door neighbor can be completely different zoning than what you are, so it's confounding.
Yeah.
Is that not working?
Here.
Sure.
See that?
Biggest flash drive ever.
Wheel on over here.
Am I in the shot? Okay. Okay. My name is Tom Millar. I work for Salt Lake City. I work in the transportation division. And if you've ever wondered who to call when something's wrong with your street, it's either me or like 300 other people. And even I get confused and don't know who to call, and I work for the city. I live just south of Liberty Park, about a mile. My wife and I live on Ramona between 5th and 6th East. We call it the area that has some of the benefits of the ELPCO area and some of the benefits of Sugar House, but that people who work in the public sector can afford. So it's a really nice area, and I'm proud to be working on projects that are near my home and that I get to enjoy, as well as providing benefit to the broader community as well. Great. Just on the laptop as well. So raise your hand if you've heard of the reconstruction of 900 South, and keep your hand raised. Okay. Raise your hand if you drove or walked or rode your bike through the temporary roundabout or the temporary closure last year. Okay, great. For those who didn't have their hand raised, you'll learn all that your neighbors know about, and then I'll provide an overview of where we're coming from, why we're doing this project, what the project is going to accomplish, and what the timeline on that project is going to be. Thanks. So my name is Tom. Again, Adon Carrillo is in the back here, his hand raised, and Eric Casperson is our project engineer who's with his family on vacation right now, so he wasn't able to be here. But if you need us throughout the project, call any of us and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks. All right, so just to give an intro kind of recap of where we've been. And to tell you also what's being built. Weird. Okay, so the project is only going to go from Lincoln Street, where that new condo went in on the corner by the vet. It'll go from there up to 1300 East, where East High School is. And again, raise your hand if you've ever driven on that road and thought, man, why didn't they replace the pavement like 20 years ago on this road? Oh yeah, it's really bad. Do you want to click to the next one? So this is why we're making a change. Obviously, it's cheaper to do nothing, or so we think. But when we leave our roads for so long that they start to break down, it actually gets more and more expensive to fix them. And so because the city's resources have been stretched thin for quite a while, and we haven't maintained some of our streets as well as we should have, some of them have fallen into disrepair, and some streets just fall into disrepair over time. An asphalt road, typically with a normal amount of traffic, like 900 South, typically lasts anywhere from 20 to 30 years if you keep it up and keep it maintained. A concrete roadway will last about 50 years if it's built correctly. So we're reaching really the end of the life of this asphalt road, and so we'd like to improve it. At the same time, make some improvements to the entire public right-of-way that'll make it a lot more easier to get around on foot, on bike, by car, on bus, and so we have a little bit more freedom to get around our neighborhood how we need to. So here's some previous engagement that we've done, and by engagement I mean interacting with the public and talking to them and answering their questions. So we did the 9-line trail extension study. Took about 2 years between 2016 and 2018, and that identified a plan for a walking and bicycling trail that would span the entire city east to west. It would connect Emigration Canyon all the way over to I-215 and the Surplus Canal. So it would really offer that opportunity to connect a lot of neighborhoods, schools, parks, and so when this project came up, we knew that there was an opportunity to build part of that trail, as well as obviously all the additional improvements that are being done with it as well. We did 3 open houses last year here at the Aviary over in the Chase Mill. The first open house we said, hey, this is the design we're going to do for 900 South. What do you think? And the proverbial pitchforks came out. Luckily, the literal pitchforks did not. And we heard from the community, no, this doesn't look like exactly like what we want, and we'd like you to rethink it. How many times have you been to a meeting where people have requested that the city rethink something and then the city doesn't do anything? Yeah, even I all the time go to meetings and I'm like, well, why are we asking them if we're not going to change it? So what we did in February was really take that to heart and take a step back. We delayed the project for a year, and in May we did some of those pop-up temporary intersections to see how some of the different ideas would work. And the thing that people took issue with at that February open house was the design of that 1100 East, 900 South, Gilmer Drive intersection, which is crazy. A 5-way stop with a floating stop sign in the middle of the sky. It's crazy. So we thought for a little bit about what we could do. We took two of the main ideas that people gave us at that first open house. We added some other ideas that we thought might be nice, and then we reached back out to the community in April via an open house and a survey to ask them, okay, which ones do you want us to test? Because we can't test all of them. We can't have cones up for 3 months testing every design that people want. So the two that people chose that they really wanted to see some real-world testing out of were a roundabout, keeping Gilmer Drive open, and then a 4-way stop closing Gilmer Drive. So we did one for a week, and then we did one for the following week. And it was really cool because people could test it out, they could drive through it, they could walk through it, they could see more or less how it might function in real life. And that's something that we rarely get to do, kind of test things out before they're built, before we invest a lot of money in them. So then we did another survey, and we asked people, okay, which of those two did you like the most? And we heard from some people who hated the roundabout before, who loved the roundabout, and vice versa. And we heard from people who said, and I won't rat you out, don't tell my neighbors, but I really liked closing Gilmer, even though I hated it at first. I'm glad that at least we got to test it. So it was really good to test things, and then we went back to the community in August and presented our findings and said that we were going to go with that, pursue that roundabout option as our preferred option, but that we still needed money. So we had to go get some more money, and we did get that money. And then we did some flyers and some door hangers for each of the businesses and residences within about a block of the project so that they knew what was going on. And this is an example of a fire truck going around that temporary roundabout during the test. And if you're interested in some of the results of that test, we collected public feedback, but we also collected some real hard, nerdy, scientific traffic data too, like how long did it take people to drive up and down the street? Were they delayed anymore, having to go through a roundabout or having to be squeezed into one lane? And so we provided this little 2-page report on what people said and also what we saw during those tests. And that was really helpful to us in making our design decisions as we move forward. So, how were decisions made? First, the public input that we received at those open houses, through those surveys. I went door to door and talked to people. We heard from a lot of people via email and other sources what they wanted the street to look like and how they wanted especially that intersection to look. We looked at that data that we collected. We had to go through a budget amendment process, and that was also what drove whether we could do one thing or another. And then we have several master plans as well, like I referred to, the 9-line trail extension study, that guide us in how we recommend and how we ultimately come up with the decisions that we do. So, here is really what you want to know. What's being built in 2019? Yes, I can confirm that in 2019, 900 South will be rebuilt between Lincoln Street and 1300 East. So this is that same map showing how long the project is. Again, it's really only about 3.5 blocks and has a giant hill right in the middle. So overall, it'll be a concrete road and not an asphalt road. So it will last much, much longer. Some of the curbs and some of the driveway approaches, that's the driveway between the street and the sidewalk, will be redone. The ones that are crumbling and falling apart, have weird pipes running through them and all of that. Those will be redone. There will be a lane reconfiguration as well. Upgraded storm drain. There are storm drain if you had X-ray vision and could see below the road. There are crazy pipes everywhere that don't need to be there anymore, that don't connect to anything, and so we'll be taking out some of those and realigning some to make those more efficient. And then throughout this corridor, from Lincoln to 13th East, as well as farther east and west, we'll be improving the bus stops so that the new Route 9 will be easier to get on, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So just between Lincoln and 1100 East, there will be a bike path, the 9-line trail on the south side. There will be additional landscaping. Between 1100 East and 1300 East, there will be an uphill bike lane, and then also an option to use Gilmer Drive if you're riding your bike and don't want to ride your bike up a Mount Everest of a hill. And then at a couple of these spot locations, we're also improving those intersections. So where the X's are on either end, we're putting in some really nice brick crosswalks that'll be red brick and will stand out against the concrete. The R, which is near the Hip and Humble at McClelland and 900 South, we're going to be doing a high visibility raised crosswalk, and that'll also be the McClelland Trail crossing. So right now, where you have to cross a really wide road and you just have a normal crosswalk, it'll actually be a much safer way to get across the road. And then again at 1100 East, there will be a 5-leg roundabout, and there will be raised crosswalks at all 5 legs. So as you're entering the roundabout, if you're driving, you will go kind of over a threshold, or you'll go over this crosswalk to slow you down. You'll go through the roundabout, and then you'll go over another raised crosswalk as you exit the intersection as well. And then in the center of the roundabout, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a second, there's some really cool improvements that we hope will help you guys. Is it okay if I answer questions at the end?
Yes.
Is that all right?
I can remember.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yes. So go to the next one. So this is approximately what it would look like if you were in an airplane flying really, really low, looking at the street, if the street got lopped off on one end. It's a very realistic view of the street. So for the most part, everything on the north side of the street is staying where it is. The park strip on the south side will be widened so that there's still the same amount of landscaping, but also space for the trail to go through. And then the sidewalks on the edges will also stay in place.
So is this looking west?
Yes, that would be looking west. So the trail will be on the south side of the street. And ultimately, like I said, that trail will make up about a 9-mile long trail. And so this is one of the sections that we can build right now, and we hope to build others fairly soon. Next. All right, this is what the roundabout will look like if you are in an airplane looking down on the roundabout. So like I said, 5 legs, 5 crosswalks, all of them are raised. The design speed, raise your hand if you've ever heard that term, design speed. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever heard of a speed limit. Great. A speed limit and a design speed should be the same speed, but they're not. What's the speed limit on I-15? 70. How fast do you drive on I-15?
60.
60.
Intentionally.
In your VW Bug that can't go faster than 60.
No.
How fast does everybody else go? 80, 75, whatever you can get away with, right? The design speed of most sections of Interstate 15 are like 95, 100 miles per hour. You could drive that fast and not get in a crash if there was nobody else on the road, right?
And if we maintained it.
And if you maintained it and didn't hit a big hole. So what we like to do is bring the design speed, or the speed that people could comfortably drive, and the speed limit more into line with each other. At a roundabout where there's pedestrians, where cars are no longer stopping, but they're able to just yield to other traffic in the roundabout, we wanted to bring that even lower than what the speed limit is, which is 25 miles per hour. So we hope that at 18 miles per hour, people will have more time to react. There will be fewer collisions, and if there are collisions, they'll be much, much lower severity than they would be if the speeds were higher. Again, better bus stops. There will be less overall pavement because of the space that the center of the roundabout is taking up, as well as some of the islands. And then in the center of the roundabout, there will be landscaping. It'll kind of mound up a little bit. There will be landscaping growing around it. And then in the center, the Arts Council is considering what art that they would like to put in the center, but that'll be art that'll be lit at night and will be really nice. So, next one. So when will it happen? It'll happen this year, 2019. April will be time to meet the contractor when we select a contractor, and we select a contractor in February. April 15th is when we anticipate notice to proceed, which is the city telling the contractor that he can put a shovel in the ground and put his cones out. Late September is when we anticipate substantial completion. That means it's
cement.
that means it's good enough for ribbon cutting. And to do it before the street festival. That's a really good point. I'll get to that in just a second. And then in October we'll have our final project checklist where we make sure that the contractor did everything that was in the designs, and then boom, the project's done. So as far as scheduling and phasing goes, I think this may be on the next slide. The phasing plan will be worked out with the contractor so that we don't have construction going on at Lincoln during the 9th and 9th Street Festival, so that we don't have it going on at 13th East when school is in session, etc. So that we can do the pieces that we can do during times that have the least amount of impact for those properties or those areas. And obviously with replacing some of the curb and some of the driveways, we'll work with each of those property owners on identifying when we could close down those driveways just temporarily to rebuild them. And that'll come once we have a contractor on board and we can figure out the plan, and we'll come back to you guys and talk about that when we have that more worked out, and it'll be available online as well. We'll be doing a door-to-door approach, especially with the most impacted property owners, either property owners who have the trail now running in front of their homes or businesses, or who are at the roundabout, who are going to see a little bit of a different configuration. Working closely on closures and changes nearby, and then we'll be giving regular construction updates either through the city or through the contractor, so that you know every time there's something that's going to happen that you need to know about, you'll get a little notice, either an email or printed or both. Okay, so the question is, who can answer my questions? Do I call you, Tom? Do I call Adon? Do I call Eric? You can call any of us. We will all be involved on the project, and then again, when we have our contractor on board, we'll have a number for him as well. Adon is our civic engagement specialist for engineering division, and engineering division builds all of the things that the city builds and manages those construction contracts. And so he's perhaps the best go-to if you'd like to call one person first, but if he's not available, feel free to reach out to the rest of us. And then we have a project email, so if you just email that and say, I'd like to get updates, we have a big long list that we've also been updating throughout 2018 and sending emails updating about the project. And then you can also go to slc.gov/mystreet, which is really nifty. I don't think I've ever said that word about anything on the city website, but it is very nifty. You go there and it has all of the projects that the city is working on public streets that are happening right now or that are coming up. So right now this is under the projects that are coming up, and you can click on it. You'll basically get a big summary just like I gave you, and then some additional details. You can even look at all of the open house materials that we did last year, all of the results from surveys and things like that. So if you'd like to dig in deeper, you can go there. But if you want to get updates or you have other questions, feel free to email that. It goes to me, it goes to Adon, it goes to Eric, and it goes to a couple other people in our divisions that help on this project. So just lastly, what else is happening on 900 South? Ooh, good question. Okay, so here's one other 2019 project and then one future project. In 2019, Route 9, which is the bus route that runs along 900 South and goes up to the University of Utah and goes out farther west, will be enhanced. Now, what do I mean by enhanced? Monday through Saturday, it will have regular 15-minute service between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. So extending that 15-minute service window, and then it'll have 30-minute service between about 5 a.m. and midnight. So you'll be able to use the 9 at any reasonable time of the day, and it'll be fairly frequent. We hope that we can improve our frequency of transit service so that you don't have to always have a schedule out wondering when it's going to come, but that the wait won't be any longer than 14 minutes. And then we'll introduce Sunday service as well, and that'll be 30-minute service from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again on 900 South. So if your kids go to the Salt Lake Arts Academy and they take the bus, if they're going early, they no longer have to wait a whole 30 minutes for the next bus, as well as being able to access 9th and 9th without a car, which I think brings me to kind of the culmination of the purpose of doing all of these projects at once, which is to improve the freedom of mobility, if you will. You don't have to drive your car. You still can drive your car. There's still a road there. But now that there's multiple options, we hope that we can reduce the need for parking. We hope that we can increase the amount of retail space and residential space that we have and not having to dedicate it to parking. And then we hope that our businesses and our homes can be more successful and calmer, and the streets can be safer with fewer people driving on them. And then lastly, west of this project, so 9th and 9th and all the way out to I-15, the city is investigating consolidating a lot of projects, public utility projects and other streetscape projects and the 9-line trail to be able to make substantial completion of that 9-line between Redwood Road and this is the Place Heritage Park. So quite a ways, probably about 7.5 miles if we can get that chunk. But that's still in the future, several years, and we still don't have very many concrete details on that. This is transportation, Joe. Okay, first question.
I have 2 questions,
Yeah.
but I just can't concentrate on them. I brought this up before, but when you put out a contract for this work,
Yeah.
do you include landscaping for the parking strips?
That's a really good question. Yes, so we will match whatever landscaping is there right now, and we will we'll redo any sprinkler systems that are in that park strip as well, so that when the project is done and you turn on your sprinklers, it still sprinkles and everything works just fine.
Okay, here's my comment on that.
Sure.
The last time they did work on Night South,
Mm-hmm.
they put in all these nice trees and sod, and a year later, none of it was cared for.
Oh.
It's just weeds and dead trees.
Yeah. We'll be working.
So I think there ought to be some kind of.
Yeah. We'll be working with all of the individual property owners so that they
Well,
know.
the individual property owners aren't there. They're in California.
So if you see any issues with landscaping, even if it's right now, even not a part of this project, please let me know and we can work on that. As far as the overall amount of landscaping to maintain, for the most part, most property owners will still have the same amount of landscaping to maintain. Some of it might be now divided by a trail, but there are some locations at corners where there will be additional landscaping, and so we'll be working with those property owners on what that means and how it will all go, and so we can work together on maintaining. Yeah, George.
Okay. I want to say, there are a whole bunch of issues. One, did you consider the fact that 13th East Project is routing traffic on 9th South,
Mm-hmm.
so you're going to do another project to stop the reroute? Where's it going to go? Down Kensington? Yeah. And
Yep.
also, the 9th South bus is going to be impacted, it sounds like,
Can't go up and down the street.
with this project.
They're
that's a really
enhancing
good
the
question.
schedule.
Yeah.
So the August date is kind of messed up.
Mm-hmm.
I think somebody should be telling the people, because the mayor's telling us we're going to have the thing starting in August, but you're telling us, no. So something's wrong there. And I want to reiterate what she just said. I've seen 4 projects Salt Lake City went through, and they did not maintain the new planting. Miller Park, McClellan Trail, the cemetery, and the tree medians on 6th East. They just stopped watering them. So you want to put in more take back to John and the administration, you still do not budget for maintenance and watering of these things you're planting. And you're gonna do the same thing on this, and it's gonna look even worse. So ask them, you can't answer the question, but you need to tell them they need to budget for maintaining and watering the plantings.
So we've gotten additional, last fiscal year, which is June to July, so the one that ended in June of 2018, was a fairly meager year in terms of maintenance funding. Starting July 1st of 2018, especially for our parks budget, there was additional funding to do that maintenance. So we've been working with them on how to maintain the landscaping that will pertain to us, which is the landscaping within the roundabout and near the roundabout that aren't the property
It's not the
owners.
issue. The issue is the climate change. Sorry to bring it up, but if there's a hot year, like it was 2 years ago, not last year, but the year before, it was so hot, the budget for maintaining the water was, you were out of water budget. So you stopped watering.
That's why they got the water bags, those gator bags to put around the trees.
Yeah, but it's only 1 week. But so take back that this is a big issue. You're doing a big project, and there's no guarantee you're going to be watering it because you budget ahead of time and hope that it's cool enough, and that doesn't make sense.
Well, I will say we do have enough maintenance budget to maintain this.
For how long?
That's what I know.
And the other thing is, as a taxpayer, I can't do certain things on my parking strip because that belongs to the city, and I can't do it. But I have to pay the taxes, and I have to water, and I have to take care of. Are you telling me the city's gonna take care of the parking strips on nights out?
No, so the individual properties will still maintain their
They're
park strip.
supposed to. I mean, they're supposed to go out and fill those gator bags and fill them up so there's water and stuff that way. So you're not, you're referring to the city, okay? You're not personally, because I know you won't be out there with your watering can.
Maybe.
But
If worse comes to worse, they might put me in charge of the plans.
maybe you end up being your job. But the fact is that that's the responsibility of the city. Will provide it, get it up to snuff to where it was, if not maybe a little better. But it is still the residents' responsibility. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was, I just wanted to
Let me
dovetail
answer
on that.
George's 2 other questions before I take your other questions. So George, your 2 other questions were, now I can't remember.
The bus?
The bus, right. So there will be, so the bus service will be implemented on August 11th. And yes, there will probably be about a month or a month and a half at the beginning of the bus service where there's going to be some...
No, sir.
No, there still will be service.
This is a small section of that.
There might have to be a temporary stop, for example, but that'll also be something that we'll consider in our phasing plan is what can we get completed before August 11th so that that transit service isn't as impacted as if we just waited.
And the other one was 13th East project.
13th East. So with 13th East being reconstructed between 13th South and 21st South in 2019, as well as our project, we'll work on our traffic control plans for both of those so that we don't route traffic onto somebody else's project.
But you also need to dovetail with the 13th East and 9th South and 8th, which right now is a traffic jam because cars sit there and park in the middle of the intersection, and there's no construction.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there is a problem that's up there.
There is.
So, I mean, it's not just the construction, but it's gonna enhance it even more so.
So back to your questions then.
Okay, I'm really concerned because this is one of the things that I brought up before when all these meetings and stuff. Why don't they put stop here on the ground? Because that's where I'm seeing most of the problem is people don't know they stop here, they inch forward and they stop there, and then they stop again.
Right.
So they stop 3 different times, and the stop sign is back here. That's where they're supposed to stop. The rest of it is you just cautiously go through the area.
Are you referring to 11 East?
And 9.
The 5
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So
and
that'll
all
no
I
longer
suggested
be.
is let's just put a stop here sign right on the road for people to stop here.
I know.
I mean, if people would observe it, they would do it.
Triangle and going across from the coffee shop to where it goes up to Gilman Park. It needs to be a diagonal. If it was diagonal, but nobody knows the diagonal is a stop.
Well, they don't realize that
But
it's supposed to stop
But like
here.
you're saying, I mean, like I said, had property there since '85, I've watched it my whole, that many years. And the thing is the roundabout's gonna back it up a lot more, so are we hoping that this is gonna be a concern if people start going another way? Because it'll back it up and they can't even get out of their, residence.
Explain that a little bit more.
Down at the end of the night, 5 to 11, if you're in those, if you have those houses, you
Next to
can't
the
get
coffee
out
shops.
because it's gonna be backed up.
Well,
Where
I can't
we-
get out now.
where
I
we-
live there.
I know, but and it's gonna, I'm telling you, it's gonna be worse.
And that's now.
So-
People that go to the farm and stuff, there hasn't been many accidents at all. And 11 doesn't go through anyway.
That's a decrease.
And so people who go that way know that. They know what to look for, they know what to do. And it's pretty split.
I'm gonna say, I was running just last week, I had 2 cars in a row try to hit me.
Yeah.
So, where I had to literally speed up or stop to avoid getting hit.
Did you have your blinker
I'm
on?
not, I was running.
And so what we like to do as transportation planners and transportation engineers is to ensure that a design doesn't require somebody to live there for 10 years to know how to use it safely. And so we hope that the roundabout, even though you are right, will have people yielding rather than people stopping, that it will increase the yielding rate to pedestrians. It'll increase the visibility of those pedestrians. And when we tested it in May, and we took it down to 1 lane in each direction, going up and down the hill on 900 South, the results actually, with about 30% of the space dedicated to cars as there was out there, or is out there right now, people actually moved through that whole 9th East to 13th East about 4 seconds faster than they did with 2 lanes and a stop sign. And so even though the line may look slightly longer than it does now, people are actually moving through slower but faster, if that makes sense. They're driving slower, but they're getting to where they go just a little bit faster.
But your coffee shop, I noticed there, you're gonna have people in that coffee tracks into the roundabout, so there's not gonna be able to go up the street because they're backed up there.
That's a great observation. So when we did the test roundabout, well, let me back up 13 years. One of the, you don't want to know how old I was in 13 years ago. When the original proposal for a roundabout here and at 900 East came up in about 2005, 2006, one of the biggest opponents to it was the coffee shop.
Yep.
And of course, it totally makes sense. So when we talked to them about doing a test roundabout, they were a little bit hesitant at first, but once we started doing it, they actually came up to me and said, you know, I think we need to make this a little bit, I think we need to control the access a little bit more. Don't let people turn left into the coffee shop or left out of the coffee shop. Try to simulate what it would be like if there was a whole median island right in front of our driveway and people could only turn right in. And as soon as we did that, what we saw was that people coming out of the coffee shop actually were able to get into traffic much easier than they are now because everybody was just kind of rolling along slowly and I don't know, they were nicer and let people get in because they weren't stopping and going until they got to the stop sign. And then as far as going into the coffee shop, yes, we still had 1 or 2 people sticking out of the driveway, but it was 1 or 2 people that we already saw sticking out of the driveway. So there was no increase in congestion or decrease in congestion during the test. So as we implement the roundabout, that's going to be one of the things that we look at most closely, and working with the coffee shop on if that is an issue and if it does mess with the roundabout on fixing that. One other thing I'll say is that we moved, or rather we kept the bus stops on the near side of the roundabout. So rather than going through the roundabout and stopping, they now stop before they get into the roundabout because we would much rather the bus stop people behind them than stop people behind them in the roundabout. So keeping the roundabout as clear as we can by stopping the buses before seems a little bit counterintuitive because buses stopping on a far side of the intersection is the preferred, but that's what we're doing with this design so that it doesn't mess up the roundabout.
I just want to mention we're 5 minutes over our meeting end time, so we still have a couple more agenda items. We're going to come back to this project a lot this spring. So Tom, if you don't mind coming and telling us your
Oh, yeah.
corny transportation jokes.
Oh, yeah.
We'll invite you
Transportation
back.
puns. My
So-
wife's sick of them, so I'll come back and talk to you guys as much
we're
as you want.
suckers for that stuff.
Can we just talk in the
Can we
in the
guys,
back?
can you
Is that okay?
contact in the back? Because we really need to move on.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you do have other questions, again, contact info's on the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Tom, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got one more presentation from the Wasatch Co-op. Barbara, let me get your presentation up.
So how many of you have seen these signs around? So, good. I want to let you know about the co-op. Are there any other, besides me, member owners of the co-op here tonight? Good. This is a good audience we need to talk to then.
Actually, just on my pressing that button. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We're making rounds to all the community councils in Salt Lake City because this grocery store that we're working to open is community owned. So we want to make sure that everybody in our communities know about it. So our member owners last spring had an opportunity to have input on redefining our mission statement. And what we came up with was a community-owned, full-service grocery store that brings shoppers and local producers together to build the local food economy using sustainable practices. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. What is a cooperative grocery store? There are 350 of them in existence across the country, about another 150 that are in development like ours. They're all locally owned, and each owner has a vote, and you can only own one share, so that maintains the democratic control of the business. Because it's locally owned, it's truly community focused. And because it's on that community level, neighbor to neighbor, there's a huge commitment to trustworthiness and transparency. And many of you are REI members. There's the patronage dividend payback. It's that same concept that we've employed with our co-op here. So our owners will receive patronage dividends once the store is open and profitable. So again, the emphasis really has a lot to do about community, and we believe that you can build community through good food. We all know when we gather around special family celebrations and traditions, it's around food. And we feel that offering high quality products and knowledgeable staff in the store will only enhance that whole experience. So in talking about local impact, with the market study that we've done, it's believed that we will have $800,000 or more in local product sales in the first year. What that means is we're going to help to expand the business models of our local farmers and also encourage new farmers to come on board. Also, because it's locally owned, the more profits are staying here on the local level. So that means for every dollar that's spent at the store, it's creating $1.60 in economic impact here in Salt Lake. Because it's a new business, we estimate that we will be offering 35 new jobs in the food service industry. And also, just with the construction or renovation of the location for the store, we estimate that we'll be putting $1.8 million into the construction, so into our local economy as well. This is not a really good, it's fuzzy graphic, but there's a line here. This is I-80 and I-15. And each of those dots show where our member owners live. We actually have member owners in 9 counties throughout the state, all the way from Logan to Cedar City and from Duchesne to Magna. But the concentration is east of I-15 and north of I-80. Once we had reached the 600 member owner mark, we started to look for a location, and that's the area that we're looking at. So our vision for the store includes, there's a really strong commitment to sustainability, as I've mentioned, so low waste, high efficiency equipment, as well as looking at our utilities, the type of utilities that are going to the building. We're looking for somewhere between a 10 and 14,000 square foot space. Easy access. We're very aware of the parking requirements for a grocery store. So it's 5 to 7 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of retail space. But we also, our member owners are very concerned about being close to public access and public transportation. This is a recent picture of our board of directors, and among us, the qualifications of our board are just pretty incredible. They include graphic design and tech, marketing, social media, human resource management, there's community organizing, social media, commercial realtor, and economic impact study consultant. So where do we go from here? As I mentioned, we currently have 646 owners. We would love to be at 750 by September. That's our next benchmark for when we can actually announce a location. Let's see. And in terms of, pretty much this entire project is being driven by volunteers. We're always looking for more volunteers, especially with our outreach. And that's it in a nutshell. Yes.
I have two questions. What does it cost to be an owner? And can you compare the square feet you talked about, say, to the, what's it called? Is it Sprouts? It's on 2nd South and 2nd East?
Used to be Sunshine Market.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a little bit smaller than that. And when we talk about those overall spaces, like with 10,000 square feet, actually 7,000 would actually be retail space, so it's a little bit smaller. If any of you have been down, there's a co-op in Moab, the Moonflower Market. It's only 2,000 square feet. It's full service. It's amazing how much they're able to pack into there. So when you think about that, I mean, you think about 4 times that. It's pretty substantial. The cost of being an owner, you're purchasing an equity share in the company, so it's a one-time investment of $300. But we have, so that it's something that's available to people throughout the economic spectrum. You can start paying as little as $15 a month.
Yeah, you're one building. So.
What's that?
You're one building.
Uh-huh.
Going out of business.
There's a new owner for that already. Yeah, we looked into it. No questions?
Thank you, Barbara, for coming, and we appreciate you coming tonight, and then also being a constant presence at the 9th and 9th Street Festival.
Yes.
So we know it's probably a good spot for you to pick up some new members. Okay, we've got Nate Salazar representing Salt Lake City Mayor Jackie Biskupski, not Tim Cosgrove. Tim sent his boss.
How's it going, everybody? It's good to be here at ELPCO. It's been a while since I've been back. And Daryl, I didn't wear a tie just for you. Because every time I wore a tie, he was like, "Why are you always wearing a tie?" And I don't know. I like to wear ties, I guess. Anyway, thanks for having me back. I'll be really, really quick. I brought a number of handouts tonight. The main one that I brought is kind of a one-pager front and back on the highlights from the state of the city that the mayor gave a week ago. The highlights that we wanted to focus on for you all tonight are clean energy and transit. Thank you, Tom, for letting us know about the 9th South expansion there. We're also working on that for 2nd South and 21st South as well. 2 big highlights with clean air. We opened the first 2, number 1 and 2, completely sustainable fire stations in the entire country. We're really excited about that. And then, of course, our solar farm that we've been working on for the last few years will be operational next year. And that'll help us reach our goal of 50% renewable energy that we're utilizing for all of our city services. Affordable housing is the next topic that I wanted to highlight. We've added nearly 2,500 units into the pipeline for affordable housing in the city. That's really exciting. She highlighted 2 different individuals and their family who've actually benefited from the work that we've been doing there. Infrastructure and of course public safety. One of the things I'll highlight with public safety is that we've graduated 81 cadets this year alone, 15 last Friday. So we fulfilled our promise for 27 new officers. George, with attrition, we're still working on that, but we're almost full, and we're working on getting back into our neighborhoods. The really cool thing about that is that we are down 25% in crime citywide, so that's a huge highlight for us. The next thing I want to talk about, the legislative session. It's fast approaching. It starts next Monday. So for all of you who are interested in that, I did bring some of the priorities that we're focusing on in the city. Mayor and the council office are pretty closely aligned on the supports here and what we're watching. Some of the highlights, water legislation, that was a big deal for us last year. A lot of compromise was made over the interim in between last session and this one. So we'll be supporting a number of these bills. Affordable housing, Representative Briscoe will be running a bill there. One of the things we're really looking at too is this municipal boundary adjustment. I'm not sure if you've heard, but Mill Creek is interested in a portion of Salt Lake City that pretty much is the Brickyard Plaza. So we'll be following that very closely. We'll be opposing that. Otherwise, I did bring a sheet as well with our legislative team that you folks can contact if you have questions about the session. So right here we have our legislative team that includes David Litvack, Jen Seelig, my direct supervisor, Lynn Pace, and Coletta. And then of course the contact information for David and Jen. If you have questions specifically for the session, we're preferring that you contact Jen Seelig's administrative assistant. Her name's Christy Marcy. All of her contact information is there on the sheet. I don't know if you guys have time for a question or two, or
absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Maybe 2 questions.
Why don't we annex Mill Creek?
I have no
It's a
idea.
wealthy tax district,
So
and their number 1 reason they said that they should annex the section is fire control in a wildfire. If Salt Lake is a larger city and has a larger base, it will have far more engines and firefighters and technology available to fight a wildfire that's within Mill Creek than Mill Creek will ever have.
I hadn't heard that.
So basically, Mill Creek wants Brickyard back. Yeah. Is the easy way to put it.
Plus a whole extra little neighborhood down there.
And a couple up around.
And with that comes a lot of tax revenue and
yeah,
Right.
like, right.
Yep.
So,
A bunch of dollars in taxes.
there's that.
so it's time to sharpen your swords. Just kidding.
Any other questions? One last thing I wanted to highlight is Public Utilities has put out this really cool calendar. I had a few left that I brought tonight, so if you need a calendar for the new year, please take one. And it's good to be back. Thanks, Derek.
I think there's also some congratulations in order for Nate. He is the new Salt Lake City School Board member for District 4, elected in November. It's great to be around powerful people. So.
Just like punishment, that's all.
And before I forget, it's worth noting that next week they shut off our brown bin pickup until the end of March.
Get your Christmas tree cut up.
So don't put your brown bins down.
Can I just make one comment as the fact that the Transcontinental Railway celebration of 150 years is this May. And it is a big celebration. People need to think about that and check it, keep their ears open and stuff that way, that people are coming from all over the world for that.
It's a big event in Utah, Promontory Point, right?
And it's bigger than because it's 150 years.
Yeah.
They are bringing a group of relatives of the Chinese people that actually worked on the rail coming here for this.
What's
It's a
amazing
big
is
thing.
Orrin Hatch was actually there when they... That's a joke he would make on his Twitter account. We have 2 more agenda items. One I want to mention is the Future of 9th and 9th Community Survey. We put that up on Tuesday. We've had over 275 people fill that out. It's something ELPCO's put together, again, to try to get a handle on where 9th and 9th is going to go in the future. Instead of responding to development issues, let's be a little bit more proactive. Let's go to them with the ideas and the results from the survey. I appreciate, George, your feedback on that. Landon Clark also was here earlier from Sugar House. He gave me some feedback. So it's a comprehensive survey. It only takes about 8 minutes to fill out. We're going to try to get a couple hundred more responses. If you want to fill it out, I have these right here. This is a QR code. You can just put that into your phone, and it will download your bank account to, no, I'm kidding. No, it will give you right to the link of the survey. It takes about 8 minutes, covers parking, transit, housing, retail, all the reasons we like 9th and 9th and how we want to make it something that we want to maintain. So, hope to get a couple hundred. It's been pretty amazing to watch those numbers go up. And lastly, we want to, bring on a new member of the ELPCO board. We've had a vacancy in East Emerson for a little while. Melanie Williamson has stepped forward to take that spot. Melanie, you live on, is it Roosevelt? Or
Browning.
On Browning. I'm actually pretty close to Dave, one of our board members who's sick today, couldn't make it. We appreciate you stepping forward. The McClellan Trail is there. It's where the in-between is located in that area. There's a lot of ELPCO interest and a lot of activities there, so thank you for stepping forward. We just wanted to have a vote. All those in favor of Melanie joining the ELPCO board for East Emerson, raise your hands or say aye or vote. Aye. All right, there we go. Any opposed? No? All right. That's the way we do business. I saw you step on your husband's foot. Any new business or any public comments, things that we should address, things that you guys want to bring up? I'm sorry we're a little late. We will be having, I think, a pretty good session of meetings so far this year, including on crime prevention, accessory dwelling units. We're going to, dive into some of the issues that are really important here in ELPCO. And if you have ideas, by all means, send them to us, because we really want to know what you're thinking and what you're interested in. So.
And to tag team on that, I'm anticipating, correct me, Jason, about every other month the mayor invites Jason and I for a luncheon in the middle of the day. All the community council chairs are there, and it's a prime time for her to say to us what's of concern to your council. So if you have concerns, let us know.
Yeah.
We're happy to raise them.
Daryl and I are not shy about bringing them up. We do it every month or every time. So please do let the, ELPCO@gmail.com is an easy way to reach us, or our contact information is on the back of the agendas.
Or go to Facebook and click.
Yep, that's another way to do it. All right, our next meeting is exactly 1 month from today, February 28th, and we'll see you then, we hope. And until then, we're adjourned.
Thank you.